Good afternoon and welcome. Just to make sure everybody's in the correct room, this is a pre-bid meeting for job 061275, Arkansas River Bridge Structure and Approaches, Broadway in Little Rock and North Little Rock. I want to thank you for your interest in the project. A couple of quick comments. I'm not sure how the meeting's going to last, but if you do need to use the restroom, it's down the hall and across from the elevators. This meeting is intended to be interactive. It's not for the panel to speak to you. It's back and forth. Here at the department, we have a way of receiving questions from the bidding community, and that's through email, through phone calls, and as such. And typically, we'll get those questions and we'll discuss them, and then we post the answers. But because of this, the nature of this project, it's become apparent that we needed a little different format. It's the first time the department's tried something like this, and so we're going to start on this little project to see if we can see how this works. So anyway, if you do have a question today that you want to ask, we'll need you to raise your hand or get the attention of the ladies with a microphone. And the reason for that is not just to be heard. Don't think you can. It's not just about being heard. It's that this is actually a webinar, and we have some people that are attending online as well. So for them to be able to hear your questions, and for the panel as well, be sure that you're speaking into a microphone so that we're able to hear it, not only here but across the web as well. We're recording the session, and a recording video with the audio, of course, will be posted. You'll be able to look back at it to be able to see what the questions and answers were. So anyway, with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Kevin Thornton. I'm Division Head of Programs and Contracts, and I'll be facilitating our meeting today. And I'd like for the panel to introduce themselves. Trinity, let's start with you. Yeah, just push the button.
Trinity Smith, the Division Head of Roadway Design.
Michael Benson, Division Head of Materials.
Rick Ellis, Bridge Engineer, Arkansas Highway Department.
John Fleming, Division Head of the Environmental Division.
Steve Peoples, the Assistant Construction Engineer.
John Ruddle, I'm the Project Manager for Garver.
Natalie McCombs, HNTB Bridge Design.
Perry Johnston, Right-of-Way Division.
Joe Sartini, District Engineer.
James Braden, Assistant Division Head, Right of Way.
Gene Kettle, Utility Section Head.
Keith Mashburn, the Senior Utilities Coordinator assigned to the project.
Bill Bradbury, Assistant Division Head of Programs and Contracts.
Erica Adams, the Staff Project Development Engineer.
Okay. You've probably all spoken with Erica before. All your questions and comments have been coming through her. So anyway, I'd like to take just a moment. I know we have several prospective bidders that are from out of state. I want to kind of step you through our process that we use here in Arkansas for bid letting. The bid opening for this project will be September 17th. It'll be here in this room. This project requires that all bids are to be submitted electronically through Bid Express. No paper bids will be allowed with this project. So if you're not set up with them, you'll need to get set up with them very soon. The bids must be submitted by 10 a.m. and we'll start reading the bids at approximately 10:30 that morning. You can listen to the bid letting through the department's website. Of course, you're welcome to attend in person, but it's also available to listen in through our website. It's in the same place where you get your other links to all the bidding information from. And we will also post the as-read bids on our website later in the day. Now, once those bids are received, we review those to make sure that all the bids are responsive in nature. And there's a long list of items of how a bid has to be responsive, and I would refer you to our standard specifications for that. But there's a few things I want to mention to make sure that you're all aware. These are the most common errors that we see, the most common issues that some contractors are not aware of. And Some of these, we understand that some states handle them a little different. We want to make sure everyone understands how we handle them here in Arkansas. The proposal schedule for this contract does contain 3 items which have a minimum or maximum bid. Those items are water, asphalt binder, and mobilization. Now, for water, there's a minimum bid price of $10 per mg. For asphalt binder, there's a minimum bid price of $120 per ton. And for mobilization, there is a maximum bid price of 5% of the subtotal of all the other items. Now, the reason I mention that is that if you bid under a minimum or over a maximum, your bid will be adjusted. It doesn't mean we throw the bid out. It means that we will adjust the bid that you've submitted. And that will change the amount that you bid on this project. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. So just keep that in mind when you're filling out your bids. One of the more common ones we probably see is the mobilization. Mobilization bid too high for mob, and so we have to reduce the mobilization, which reduces your bid. We're guessing what happens is toward the end of your bid preparation, maybe some prices changed and you forgot or whatever to go back and change that amount of mobilization. Just be aware. And one other point is that if we adjust your bid up or down, we don't adjust any other items to compensate. Okay? It actually adjusts the total bid amount that you're submitting to the department for the project. So please keep that in mind. After the bids have been reviewed and adjusted by our division, there's a bid review committee, and we will meet to discuss the bids. This meeting usually occurs on the Friday after the letting. So that would mean that September 19th, more than likely, I mean, it could move a little bit, but typically we meet the Friday after the bid letting and we review the bids. And then the bid committee will forward their recommendations to the director. And upon his approval, the projects are awarded. The approved awards list will be posted to our website as soon as our director has signed that. If you are the winning bidder, you'll be notified by letter. We'll get that information, that letter to you just as soon as we can. You will have 10 business days from that date, from the date of the letter, to submit your DBE forms and your NOI certificate to us. Once we get your DBE submittals back, it'll take us 2 or 3 days to review that before we can make sure everything's all right. And then, upon approval of your DBE submittal, we'll send you another letter along with the unsigned contract. That will come to you. You have 10 business days to sign the contract and return that contract to us along with your bonds and proof of insurance. Once we receive the signed contract, of course with your bonds and insurance, then we will forward that contract to the director for his signature, which executes the contract. Once the contract is executed, the work order for this project will be issued 15 days after execution of the contract. Okay? Now, keep in mind, there's, can be a few changes for a few days in there, and I know time is critical on this project. But one of the things that I wanted to mention to you roughly, and we've had this question already, how long is it going to take to get the work order? How long will the work order be issued? It's usually about 6 weeks. That's a good rule of thumb. From the bid letting until the time when the work order is issued, that's about a 6-week period in there, okay? Any questions about that? Excellent. So far, so good. Okay. One other thing I want to mention too, we see this a lot, and just to make sure everybody's on the same page, I mentioned before that we're using BidX for your bids to be submitted through. Please understand that there can be some issues. If you're using third-party software, I don't know what they all are, Heavy Bid or some of the other ones that are used. When you're loading your bid from your third-party software into BidX, there can be some issues with alternate bid items. This has happened in a few cases. The reason we want to mention it is because it can have a rather dramatic effect on your bid. What's happened before is if you do not have your software set up correctly, the third-party software can actually enter 0 unit prices for some of the alternate items. And the reason why that's important is that if you submit an alternate bid item and you bid one and there's a 0 on the other one, our specifications state that we are to accept the 0 unit bid item. And we've been told other states want you to bid 0 on the alternate item. In Arkansas, we don't want you to do that. In fact, don't do that. Okay? You bid one item, one of the alternates, whichever item you choose out of that list of alternates there, bid one. But if you put a 0 for any other ones, that's the one that will be selected. 0 in Arkansas is a bid that we will accept. Any questions about that? Good. Okay. And one other comment too. Some people have felt like once BidX accepts their bid that they've got everything taken care of and there's no errors with it. That's not the case. BidX will accept bids with errors in it. It will tell you you have errors, but it will accept those bids from you. So just because you can submit it doesn't mean that you have, taken care of everything you need to take care of. So please keep that in mind as well. All right. All right, unless there's other questions right now, I think we're ready to begin the question and answer session that you're all here for. One of the things we asked everyone to do was if you knew you had a question, would be to submit your question to us. And so what we've done is we've put this list together and we've kind of put it together, the questions that are related, and try to put them in order so that it makes somewhat sense. Please, at any time, if you have an additional, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question and then I'll let whoever is the appropriate person on the panel respond to that question. If you have any additional questions or any clarifications, just raise your hand. We'll get the microphone to you, and then we can go from there. All right? Okay, let's get started. The first one I have here says, what is the budget for this project? If the contract amount, the A portion of the bid, comes in over the budget, what protocol governs whether the project will be awarded or not? In Arkansas, we do not release the engineer's estimate. We do not release the engineer's estimate prior to bid or after the bid. It's never released. Now, what I will tell you about this project is we do release what we call the next 3 lettings report, and on that we give a range for the projects. And this project was shown in the range from $75 million to $100 million. So that was the range that was shown for this project. As far as what governs whether or not it's over our estimate or not, that's a decision for the bid review and for the director to take into account the several different factors that can come into play on that. All right? I'm not going to ask after every question if you have another question, so just feel free to ask at any time. The next question says, due to the complexity of the project, the long lead time items, shop drawing approvals, Coast Guard, Army Corps approvals, additional construction right-of-way requirements, and other planning issues, we request a planning procurement period of at least 4 months prior to site mobilization and commencement of contract time. On this project, the work order will be issued as I described to you earlier. The number of days on this project, there is no maximum amount. That's up to you to bid the maximum or the number of days, not only the B component, which is the number of days the bridge will be out of service, but also the C component, which is the total number of contract days. Whatever amount of time you need for these items in this question, you should include in your C component. You're the ones who are deciding what the contract length is on this project. The next question says, when does the department anticipate initializing a full work order or notice to proceed on this project? Again, it would approximately be 6 weeks after the letting. Next question says, due to the complexity of this project, engineering and option analysis, detailed schedule analysis, procurement issues, and other estimating items, we request a bid extension of at least 3 weeks. At the time of the letting, this project will have been advertised for 12 weeks, which is substantially longer than we normally do. And we do realize it's a complicated project. That's why we advertise it for 12 weeks. But we will not be extending the advertisement period for this project. Please advise if a three-dimensional electronic model of the referenced area, tide arched ends, exist, and if it can be made available to the bidders. Who knows about that?
A 3D model is not available at this time.
Okay. The next question says, plan sheets 32, 36, and 50 show two each parking lots on the south bank that are closed during construction. Would the department please provide a plan sheet with limits of these areas that are designated for contractors' use? Would the department also consider adding a bid item for temporary security fence and gates at these parking lot areas? Bid item 901052 appears to be for permanent fencing only. Perry, can you answer that one?
We have a map prepared showing what property the commission owns on the south side of the bridge. We'll make that available for you through your office, Kevin.
But there's no plans to add that pay item to the job, is there, for that temporary fencing? That's something we would expect the contractor to just include in other items of the contract. We don't typically include that, correct? Okay.
That's correct.
The next question says, no temporary easements or construction laydown areas can be found within the plan sheets for the project on the north bank. Will the department designate areas for construction access similar to those shown on the south bank? If so, would the department please provide a plan sheet detailing the limits?
The commission does not have any additional land on the north side. Most of that is city-owned property, so there's really, that would be up to the contractor to negotiate with the city for any access and use of property on the north bank.
There were several questions related to offsite. I'm sorry, yes, you have a question? Hang on just a second, let's get the microphone to you. Go ahead.
That we're kind of hamstrung without having some idea. Y'all deal with the city and all like this. We were hoping you could maybe get some sort of agreement with the city and let us know what that is, as opposed to each of us trying to figure out what to do, because there's just, on that north end, there's no place to even put your cranes.
The intent is that it's up to the contractor to secure those areas. Yeah, is that typically, anything else you'd like to add to that? I mean, that's, from my experience, that's been the standard protocol that we've used on projects. When we acquire right-of-way for a project, we don't acquire additional right-of-way for work areas. Now, we do acquire some easements sometimes. Is that correct, for work roads?
We would assist in acquiring an easement for a work road or that sort of thing. We normally don't try to negotiate or acquire anything for equipment or staging areas or anything of that sort. We leave that up to the successful bidder to work those items out.
This next question says, referring to the work restriction area just off the south bank and east of the bridge, what is there and why is that area restricted? Do the limits described in the plans have a built-in buffer zone to protect whatever is there?
The area described, shown on the plans, is a restricted area. The contractor can float a barge over that area. You're not going to allow to be able to anchor in that area or put a spud down, but you can work over the top of it as long as you're floating, but we cannot disturb the river bottom within that area shown.
And the buffer zone is included in the area?
Yeah, and there is a buffer zone included, but we don't want you anchoring or spudding into the buffer zone also. So you need to stay out of the entire area shown on the plans.
Yes.
So what's there? Is it structural? Is it environmental? Is it a pipeline? Can you give us an idea of what's there so we understand the risk in being in that area?
It's an environmental constraint.
Hazardous?
No.
That's it?
Yes, that's it.
I love it. Next question says, some parking areas are being utilized for contractors' use on the south bank. Can the limits of those areas be better defined? What areas are available on the north bank?
As we said before, on the north bank, not a whole lot available over there from the commission's point of view, but there is quite a bit of city property on that side that you could negotiate for the use of those lands.
Yes, you have a question.
Is there a contact person with the city? Is there a contact person with the city that is aware of the project and what it entails?
Yes, there is. I would figure that'd be Mike Smith. He's the city engineer for North Little Rock. We can make that contact information available to you for the city and for the county officials.
We'll get that information and we'll post that in the documents on the website, so you'll have access to that as well. Next question says, the plans and specifications call for stockpiling dirt from the north shared access ramp for quick replacement if the river rises. Can we stockpile this dirt on the park property?
The fill material must be stockpiled within the contractor's negotiated laydown area. Any fill placed within the floodplain area, however, must be coordinated with the local floodplain administrator.
Okay. The next question says, the traffic control drawings indicate that we closed the river trail on the south side. The specifications seem to contradict this. Can we close the south trail and get the whole area from Highway 10 to the river? Can we cut down the trees on the riverbank for construction access and staging?
Regarding the river trail closure on the south side, the river trail can be closed from stage 1 through the completion of stage 3. I have to ask someone else to answer the question about the trees, the removal of the trees.
Yes, the trees can be cut down. The trees that are within the construction limits and the right-of-way can be cut. The department will handle replanting the trees after the contractor's done.
If it seems like we're working from a list of questions, we are. Okay, so anyway, thank you for the list of questions, by the way. The next one says, the drawings indicate a plan in which the tide arch spans are floated and set in place. What was the engineer's thoughts on where these spans would be pre-assembled?
We as a design team anticipated that the contractor would use the area north of the main channel, but between the Broadway Bridge and the Main Street Bridge for the erection of the arch. However, we did not define an exact area due to our desire to allow the contractor some flexibility on exactly where he stages.
Okay. Next question says, we are not given very much room for cranes and construction equipment on the project north of the river. Is it possible to get more construction easement for work on the north side of the river?
I believe the answer to that question will be similar to the previous responses that Perry addressed, that any area that is outside the state's right-of-way would need to be negotiated by the contractor.
Okay. a very similar question. It says the construction easement and right-of-way lines in the contract documents are very limiting. In most areas, there is not enough room for the crane beside the bridge. This will greatly increase time and cost for construction. Does the department expect contractors to be responsible for the time and cost of additional temporary right-of-way requirements? Please clarify. I think that answer.
Yes, similar to the previous question.
Next question says, is the department going to coordinate with the local public agencies or property owners and issue an amendment providing uniform terms and conditions, including restoration for the neighboring potential river access and staging areas on the adjoining riverfront properties that are publicly owned? Perry, you want to take a shot at that one?
I guess we could, but I don't think we had any plans to issue an amendment.
If I understand the question, I don't know that this is something that we have done before. If it's right of way, or if the contractor leases land from someone else, then it's the contractor's responsibility to return it to whatever condition that property owner, whatever the agreement was. So that would be up to whatever type of agreement you have with the property owner that you're leasing the land from. Is that correct? Next question says, are there known and or additional criteria for temporary access and restoration of the levee wall through the adjoining properties on the North Riverbank?
We anticipate that if a contractor wanted to use the area that's to the northwest of the project, that would be outside the levee wall, that the contractor would need to negotiate with the city of North Little Rock for that area. And then the city would, you would have to repair it per their requirements. That would be part of your negotiation to see what you would need to do, what you would be allowed to do, and then it would need to be repaired to the similar condition before you started work.
Any follow-ups on that? Okay. This next question says, since a new gas line is currently being installed just upstream of the bridge, will there be posted limitations on barge spuds or demolition techniques required by the contractor?
CenterPoint Energy is installing a gas line roughly 350 feet upstream of the bridge. They will have signs either side saying no anchors or dredging in that area. Their line will be installed roughly 40 feet deep below the bottom of the channel. We would suggest that you contact CenterPoint Energy per the SP for more details.
The contact information for CenterPoint is in the SP?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The next question says, there are currently crews on site relocating water and gas lines. When will those scopes of work be completed? Will the existing lines be abandoned in place or removed by those contractors?
The gas line is scheduled to be completed by September 30th. The gas line will remain on the bridge to be removed by the bridge contractor. The water line that is existing on the bridge will also be removed by our contractor. And the contractor will also coordinate with the activation and deactivation of the new water line.
Okay.
For removal.
Can I ask a quick follow-up? I just noticed there's AT&T this morning. Is that out of the way too?
Yes, believe the only remaining utility adjustments we have are the gas line and North Little Rock wastewater has a sewer adjustment on the north side. AT&T is complete. Several other utility companies have already completed.
On the gas line that's to remain behind, do you guys have a list of materials that are in that gas line specifically interested if any asbestos fittings or insulation exist on that gas line?
Yeah, the only asbestos we know of is in the section of the gas line that's in the ground, beyond this, after the pipeline comes off the bridge and goes into the ground, there is an asbestos insulation on the pipe. And I have to refer utilities if that's going to be moved or not.
Yeah. At the location of Bent 3, the underground portion will be cleared of the asbestos, so there's no conflict with the Bent. Centerpoint will complete that probably here within the next couple of months. I might also go ahead and add, there's still some minor adjustments of the two electric companies, Energy, who's on the Little Rock side, and North Little Rock Electric's on North Little Rock side. Theirs is primary for luminaires. Naturally, we want to keep a safe environment for our pedestrians to travel in public, so we want to keep the luminaires on long as possibly we can. During the pre-construction conference that will be for the project, the coordination and will be worked out for the appropriate contact people. And then another thing you might be interested in, Energy Transmission has a transmission line crossing. It's about 400 feet upstream. There is no plans to adjust that line.
Any other questions about that? I've got more to read. Yes.
Is there a point of contact for the high electric line where we can confirm the KVA on that line? 115.
Yes, if you
Question withdrawn.
Good stuff. Okay, next question says, since all river traffic is closed except the navigation channel, do we need safety platforms for the demo of concrete arches and the construction of plate girder approaches?
The special provision requires that all river traffic will be restricted to the navigation channel during the demolition of the existing bridge and the construction of the new bridge. Therefore, safety platforms will not be required for the demolition of the concrete arch spans. However, safety platforms are required for the construction of the plate girder spans over Highway 10 and Highway 100.
Okay. When the contractor is not performing work in the river, will he still be required to have a boat and operator available for the engineer?
No. No, we would just need access when there's something going on out there that would need inspection or review. And if nothing's going on, then a boat would not have to be available at that time.
Okay. What requirements or permits will be required for temporary shoring or docks that may be required to support construction activity?
If you want to build additional platforms or shoring that are not shown in the Section 404 SP that's in the contract, we will have to go back to the Corps of Engineers, Little Rock District Corps, and get additional permits or modify the existing permit. The Section 404 SP covers the conditions of modifying the existing permit. Depending on the complexity of your request, it could be a matter of a few weeks getting a permit modification. If the modification requires another public notice and public review or agency review, it could take up to 120 days to get a modification. So But that's all covered in the 4.4 SP and Section 110 of the spec book.
And that also answers the next question. It says, if permitting is required, what is the time anticipated to get these permits? Next question says, how long can we close navigation channel for steel arch demolition?
Based on our previous conversations with the Coast Guard, we anticipate a 24-hour window for the stoppage of river traffic during the steel arch demolition. The contractor is responsible for submitting a work plan to the Coast Guard and the Corps to obtain the necessary approvals for the demolition of the bridge.
Next question, how long can we close the navigation channel for tide arch placement?
Similar to the previous response, we anticipate there'll be a 24-hour window. Also, similar approvals from the Coast Guard and Corps are required for that work.
Okay. Next question says, can a drawing be made available for the river traffic control layout showing the required layout and number of channel markers, no-wake buoys, signs, etc.?
The answer would be no, we're not going to provide a drawing. We give the minimum requirements in the SP, the River Traffic Control SP, and we don't know what the contractor's plan is going to be for demo, so we don't provide an exact drawing. The contractor is required to provide a drawing to the engineer. We will review that drawing, coordinate it with the Coast Guard and the Corps, and get back with the contractor if his plan is acceptable.
Okay. The next question says, the special provision for Division 108, specifically 10802D, appears to relate to projects that include an owner-specified contract duration. In particular, it states, the department cannot guarantee the department's resources will be available to meet the accelerated schedule. As this project includes A plus B plus C components, please verify whether or not the owner intends to provide adequate resources to meet the contractor's work schedule, including but not limited to critical path activities requiring state inspection forces outside of normal working hours. If the owner does not intend to provide adequate inspection resources, will the contractor be allowed to provide independent third-party inspectors to ensure timely progress of the critical path items during the B phase of the project? The answer to this one is that the department, Steve, go ahead. Yeah.
That section of our special provision that lists 10802D now reads like this. The department allocates its resources to a contract based on the total time allowed in the contract. However, should the contractor propose an accelerated work schedule indicating an early completion date, the department will provide the necessary resources to meet the demands of the approved work schedule.
Yeah, and we will issue an addendum to get that new SP into the contract. Yeah. Next question. Plan sheet 32, sequence note number 4 states, demolish and remove Doubletree Access Bridge. Plan sheet 97 contains a note next to the hatched area for this access bridge that states, existing bridge to be removed by others. Please clarify if removal of this bridge is to be included within the scope of this project. If it is, please also clarify which bid item it shall be covered under.
The access bridge at the Doubletree will be removed by the contractor performing the renovations of Robinson Auditorium. Therefore, it's not a part of this contract. Plan sheet number 97 will be revised to clarify this situation.
Okay. Next question. Is there any lead paint known to exist on the bridge? Are any asbestos products known to exist on the bridge?
The lead paint was removed back in 1996 under a painting contract. The bridge is fully enclosed and the bridge was cleaned and repainted. And as already discussed, the only asbestos known is the gas line that is off the bridge within the right-of-way at Bent 3. Is there any other details on, does anyone else have any questions related? I know there's been several questions about that same issue, but
Okay. Next question says, the building under the south ramp that is to be protected, the building under the south ramp that is to be protected, what utilities are in there and who maintains it?
Energy owns the building to be protected underneath that ramp. That houses 4 transformers for some of the buildings across the Harp.
Okay. Next question says, on the north bank of the river and just to the west of the existing bridge, there is a drainage outfall structure. This structure is vaguely shown on the plan sheet number 102 between stations 117 and 118. Would the department please provide as-built drawings for this structure and the drainage system that feeds into it, starting at the structure and extending beyond the north project limits at station 130? Specific information needed includes location and details for all inlets, structures, size, barrel, type of drainage pipe, boxes, backfill material used during installation, and protection measures required if any are deemed necessary.
Currently, we don't have any other information other than what's shown in the survey. Those structures were built by the city of North Little Rock, and we don't have any more information on those right now.
Okay. Next question says, we do not where we are required to locate the leveling pad. And by the way, this is talking about, I believe, a retaining wall. It says, we do not know where we are required to locate the leveling pad. The retaining wall special provision, page 6, states that the leveling pad will have a minimum earth cover as shown on the plans. The only mention of minimum in the plans is detail D, as in David, on sheet 399. And that detail shows 2-foot minimum below the adjacent ditch invert. However, the typical sections do not include ditches at the face of the retaining walls. Can the leveling pad be set 2 feet minimum below the finished grade of the face of wall, just like other department projects where there is not a ditch along the face of wall?
To answer the question, yes. Since there is no ditch adjacent to the wall, the leveling pad can be placed 2 feet below the finished grade.
This next question is also, yes, there's something else.
We are also in the process of revising those drawings to actually show a ground elevation to accommodate the fabricators of that MSC wall.
Next question says, please provide the elevations of the finished grade along the face of each wall. That's what he just said. So, mark that one off too. Next question. This has to do with the substructure. The special provisions, drilled shaft foundation, section 4 of the construction section, page 5 of 15, direct that permanent casing and wet construction methods are to be used together. This specification requires casing installation to elevation as shown on plans. The drawings for Pier 4 and 6, sheet 122, require casing to be at elevation 203.4 for Pier 4 and at elevation 175.5 for Pier 6, while the drawing for Pier 5, which is on sheet 129, requires casing to be at elevation 189.5. Note 4 on sheets 122 and 129 also indicate that permanent casing shall extend approximately 3 feet below top of competent rock. Sheet 108 also shows 50 blows over 8 inch at Pier 4, 50 blows over 4 inch at Pier 5, and no blow count for Pier 6, though it is safe to assume the density to be similar. It is unlikely that the casing can be embedded the full 3 foot into material of these type without damaging the casing. Would the department consider revising the specifications and drawings to require 6 inches to 12 inches of minimum embedment below the top of the competent rock instead of the full 3 foot shown in the note?
The elevation of the bottom of the casing was estimated to obtain an adequate seal into the upper rock stratum. The design team anticipated that cutting teeth on the bottom of the casing would likely be required to obtain that minimum penetration. It will be the contractor's responsibility to obtain the proper embedment into the rock to ensure a proper seal and the constructability and alignments of the shafts. If the full embedment shown on the plans is deemed to be not necessary by the contractor may decrease the casing embedment. However, the contractor accepts full responsibility of the shaft integrity and its alignment. In no event shall the minimum tip elevation shown on the plans be raised without the approval by the engineer.
Okay. Next question. Drawings for drilled shaft casings at Pier 4 and 6 on sheet 122 and Pier 5, sheet 129, do not appear to contain notes that identify the material type and wall thickness of the casing. Please provide the type of steel and the thickness of the casing required for Piers 4, 5, and 6.
Subsection C, under the materials section of the drilled shaft special provision, provides the following. Permanent casing shall be of steel conforming to ASTM A252, grade 2 or 3. The contractor shall furnish certification from permanent casing. Permanent casing shall be of steel conforming to ASTM A252, grade 2 or 3. Okay. The contractor shall furnish certification from the fabricator detailing the designated specification with which the furnished casing complies. Permanent casing shall be watertight and clean of all sand, gravel, bonded concrete, or foreign material before use. Basically, the spec gives the material requirements, but it requires that the contractor size the casing to meet his means and methods for the installation of the drilled shafts, which it says that the size and strength requirements for the permanent casing are dependent on the means and methods that the contractor will employ to install the casing. Therefore, it's the contractor's responsibility to size the permanent and temporary casing, if any is needed.
All right. Next question. Sheet 303 for Highway 10 entrance ramp shows permanent casing, but does not appear to contain notes that identify the material type or wall thickness of the casing. Please provide the type of steel and thickness of the casing required for the Highway 10 entrance ramp.
Similar to the previous question, our response is that it be the contractor's responsibility to size the permanent casing to meet his means and methods for the installation.
Okay. Next question. Special safety requirements for bridges over roadways allow for 15-minute interval traffic stoppage on the spans over Highway 10 and Highway 100. This does not allow enough time for crane mobilization, demobilization in the area. We request allowable lane closures and/or detours in these areas during demolition, girder erection, and concrete placement.
During the demolition of the existing bridge, both Highway 10 and Highway 100 will be closed. The girder erection, however, would take place within the 15-minute intervals for temporary traffic stoppage. The concrete placement for the new bridge can be performed without a traffic stoppage since safety platforms will be in place at that time.
Have a question? Kim?
Can we get you to reconsider that about the erection? I mean, those are not that busy a road, and erecting structural steel over there in 15-minute windows is kind of, you know, I'm just asking if we can't get maybe restrict it to weekends or something, but see if we can get you to reconsider that.
We'll get together and take a look at it and get a response back to you. Next question. The journal notes on Plan Sheet 103 for pre-boring states, pre-bored holes shall be 6-inch greater than the cross-section dimension of the pile. Standard specifications 805.05A states, pre-bored holes shall be smaller than the diameter or diagonal of the pile cross-section. Would the department please confirm which requirement holds precedent over the other?
The notes that require the outside diameter to be 6 inches plus the diameter, 6 inches greater than the cross-sectional dimension are correct. That was a design issue that we needed that additional diameter, and because those piles will be, the annular space between the pre-bored hole and the pile will be backfilled with concrete, we needed that extra space to get the concrete in. So that is the requirement. The 6 inches additional is required.
Okay. Next question. It's a long one, so bear with me. The department standard specifications, 807.45, sub-punching, sub-drilling, and reaming of holes for field connections limits the use of automatically controlled drilling to one side of main member connections. The nature of this job, particularly the arch tie, lends itself to automatically controlled drilling of all holes, but especially for holes at field splices. The parallelogram shape of the tie will make drilling holes for field splices awkward, considering the relationship of the webs to the flange. Some holes would require drilling on a sloping plane, and some holes would be drilled upside down in line assemblies as required by the standard specifications and the contract documents. Would the department consider the inclusion of a special provision based on AASHTO LRFD Bridge Construction Specifications, 3rd edition, 2010, sections 11.4.8.3, numerically controlled drilled field connections, and 11.5.3.3, check assembly, numerically controlled drilling? These specs take advantage of available technology that make it possible to burn and drill holes on a numerically controlled machine guided by electronic drawing files. This technology eliminates traditional drilling in a line assembly while ensuring accuracy of fit at field splices. Most importantly, fabrication time and cost will be greatly reduced.
The department is still considering the use of the numerically controlled drilling, and that would probably just be for the arch spans only. We will let you all know when that decision has been made.
It should be fairly quick. We have discussed it with several in the administration. We need to discuss it a little bit more before we're able to give you an answer, but we would expect an answer in the next day or so for this issue. Yes, we have a question, Kim?
Why would this only be considered in the arch?
The field fitment issues and the problems that you have in the field by utilizing this for the plate girders is some concern to us. And right now we're, like Rick said, we're looking at allowing it for the arch assembly.
When you say arch, you're saying the entire arch, tie girders, floor beams, and everything, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Next question says, would the department please provide more information regarding the design of the existing steel arch span bridge? Specifically, is the existing arch designed as a tied arch, or is it a true arch with the truss forces resisted in the footings?
The existing arch bridge is a tied arch. However, the existing plans indicate the foundations are designed for a significant arch thrust, and there is some axial tension in the tie girder. There is no evidence regarding the method of erection that may have changed the load path when they erected the structure.
Okay. Next question says the following question is referring to job 061275, bridge number 07292 over Arkansas River. Drawings number 54481, 54485, 54487 seem to show cross frames C1 through C6 shop welded to girder 9. Doing so would make the girders very difficult to move because of the girder lengths, which are 127 feet and 131 feet, and the width, which would be over 19 feet. Can these diaphragm shop welds be changed to field welds? We believe that doing so would not only make the girder much easier to move and transport, but also allow for more competitive bids and cost savings. Sheet 54481, 54485, 54487 are attached to this email for reference.
Members C1 through C6 are not actually shop welded to the girder. These members are to be field bolted per the details on drawing 54487. The shop weld shown on drawing 54487 is actually the splice plate and not the diaphragm or the girder flanges. Members C1 through C6 are then connected to these splice plates via bolted connections. The connection plates are to be fabricated with the slope shown in order to give a tight fit among the connected parts.
Okay. Next, it says the following question is referring to job 061275, bridge 07292 over the Arkansas River. Drawing numbers 54369 and 54370 show 3 girders, girders 1, 2, and 3, that are curved with tight radii. These girders are all over 133 feet long and have middle ordinance of 6 foot 1 inch, 6 foot and 1/4 inch, 4 foot 5 3/4 inch. Dimensions like those on girders 1, 2, and 3 can make for very unstable girders. It is, in the interest of increased safety during fabrication, sheets 54369 and 54370 are attached to this email for reference. Transportation and erection. Will you allow an additional bolted field splice in these girders? If so, will you locate and detail the splice and allow all bidders this information, or would we need to locate and detail the additional field splice for ourselves?
We are revising the plans to include an additional splice for girders 1 through 3, and those details should be available within the next week.
Next question. Standard specifications 807.78 states, and 1 field finish coat. Will it be acceptable to apply all 3 coats of the required paint system to the inside of the arch span tie girders in the fabrication shop?
Yes, that will be acceptable.
Next question. Standard specifications 807.06 states that type 1 bolts shall be provided when used with painted structural steel or when galvanized bolts are specified. If all 3 coats of the required paint system are applied in the fabrication shop, will it be acceptable to install mechanically galvanized bolts in shop bolted connections and at the discretion of the contractor in field bolted connections? Further, for the portion of the mechanically galvanized bolt exposed to the inside of the arch span tie girder, confirm that the intermediate and top coats of paint will not be required. It is worth noting that numerous state specifications require galvanized fasteners on painted structures.
Galvanized bolts are acceptable for the fabrication of the tie girder and the field bolted connections. If galvanized bolts are used, the portion of the bolt exposed to the inside of the tie girder need not be painted.
Okay. Next question. The special provision for prefabricated steel truss states that each bidder must identify the intended bridge supplier as part of the bid submittal. As this is an electronic bid submittal, can the wording be modified to allow the apparent low bidder to identify their intended supplier within 3 days of the bid date?
Yes. Yes, we're modifying the wording in a special provision.
Is it going to be for 3 days, or the addendum's already gone out? Okay. All right. Okay. So that's being addressed. Anything? She said the addendum has already been sent out for that.
Yes, that entire sentence was removed from that paragraph. No notification will be necessary until after the contract.
There's a list.
Turn your mic on.
Oh, thought it did. Sorry. We revised the SP to include there are two pre-qualified suppliers of that truss span. So as long as you are using one of those, there should be no problem.
Okay. Next question. Are full-size CNC drilled holes allowed on main members, connection plates, shapes, and splice plates with progressive check arch assembly instead of drilling from a solid or template drilling and assembly?
I guess this is similar to the question we had previously. The department is still weighing this as an option.
Next question. Is prepayment of raw materials allowed for out-of-state fabricators?
This issue, we call it a materials estimate. It's addressed in the specs and the standards 109.07B, but this payment is allowed. Typically, the approved storage area would be in the state of Arkansas. If it's not, that requirement may be waived if the contractor provides the department a separate bond for the full amount of the requested estimate. And this could be a raw materials estimate, or catching the next question, it could be a fabricated steel materials estimate. There's some other requirements there to it's requested through the prime, and he needs to pay the supplier within a certain amount of time, but it's in there for this, in the standards for you to look at if you want to pursue that.
All right. That concludes the list of questions that I have. Do you have any additional questions for the panel? Yes.
For the removal of the dolphins at the shipping channel, have there been discussions between the department and the Coast Guard as far as the timing of the removal of the dolphins, when they can be removed?
We haven't discussed that with them. I would assume that would be a part of the work plan that would be submitted and gain the approval of the Coast Guard for when those would actually be removed.
Okay.
At the risk of upsetting Mr. Fleming up there, I want to go back to the restricted area. Can the department describe consequences or penalties if an action by the contractor inadvertently goes into that area?
Can you repeat the question again? The mic wasn't.
Yeah, for the area on the plans in the river that is restricted access that we discussed a while ago, I guess could the department describe the penalty or consequences for inadvertent action within that activity? What's the risk? Are there any penalties? Just I don't know.
Yeah, well, the way the special provision's worded, any contract activities planned in or near this area shall be coordinated through the resident engineer with the environmental division for having review. When you get ready to work in that area, you need to submit what your plan is, and we need to coordinate with exactly what activities you plan over that restricted area and how you plan on working around it. As far as penalties go, We haven't set out what the penalties or any type of withholdings would be if you did damage that restricted area. We're hoping that you avoid it, per the SP. But as far as getting into the details of what's down there, we can't get into those details. It's just something we need to avoid. And under Section 107 of the spec book, if you want to look at restraining conditions, environmental restraining conditions, Section 107 of the spec book covers that issue.
Question?
Yeah, we submitted a couple of questions that apparently you haven't addressed it. One of them is, please provide a copy of any endangered species assessment reports that had been conducted for this project.
Yeah, we'll get those to you. There are no endangered species impacted by this project. We have a letter to the Fish and Wildlife Service and a concurrence letter back. We can provide those to you. But there are no endangered species issues on this project.
Okay, the other question is, it's kind of long, I'm gonna read it. The specification regarding nesting sites of migratory birds creates a gray area as to whether or not contractors can work on the critical path of the bridge between March 1st and September 30th. This equates to 7 months of the year or 213 days in just 1 year period with $80,000 per day road user costs. This equates to $17,040,000. Where we are not sure whether we can or cannot work. This is a very large amount of risk to put on contractors. Will AHTD consider suspending the daily road user costs if a migratory bird cause work stoppage?
Well, I doubt that we would suspend, if the bridge is out of service, we would not suspend the $80,000 per day of penalties, no. Now, one point to be made, but if the bridge is out of service, then the birds can't nest on it. I mean, it should be gone. That, you know, maybe that's what we were discussing earlier, was that the $80,000 per day, that is the B component. And the B component is not in effect unless the bridge is out of service. And we were thinking, it was our thought process, said if the bridge was out of service, it was gone. But you would still have the C component, which I believe is $2,300 a day. So there's a big difference there. And maybe there's some way that the two could happen, but we are changing the SP for the migratory birds. So.
Okay, my understanding is if we are working, doing the demo of the bridge, and the birds show up on the bridge, we had to stop work.
Well, and that's the window of opportunity where what you're describing could happen, yes. We were thinking there could be a misunderstanding, thinking that it was $80,000 a day for any phase of the project, but it's only for when the bridge is closed to traffic. But let him explain the new SP, and maybe this will help to answer your question.
Yeah, okay. We're going to add a addendum SP to the contract for the nesting sites of migratory birds. The new SP has two options. Option one is just like the SP that was originally in the contract, where you pre-net the bridge. Option two is before March 1st, you can clean all the birds off, all the bird nest off the existing structure. Then you can keep cleaning the nest off every day until you get ready to demo. Basically, you would just keep, every day the birds try to start building a nest, you clean it off before they're able to build a nest and actually nest on the bridge. So the new SP has two options, and the option two allows you just to keep the birds off, cleaned off, the bird nest cleaned off the bridge until you get ready to demo it. So it does allow you to get to that point of demoing the bridge without netting the bridge. And that addendum will be sent out
soon, next day or so.
Yeah,
next day or
soon.
so.
And that, I hate to be the tree hugger, but that cleaning off the nest is that's happening in the winter before March. That's an inactive nest. But the intent is that the contractor would have the responsibility and the opportunity to prevent the birds from nesting. And if that doesn't happen, if the birds get in there and nest, then time's going to march on from the assessment of time charges. So the contractor has that responsibility, to prevent the birds from nesting, either by netting the bridge or removing those inactive nests and then monitoring daily that the birds aren't allowed to nest on the bridge, so that when the time comes, you can demo that structure.
Yeah, keep in mind that the birds can build a nest and start nesting within a couple of days. So if you choose option 2, you have to be vigilant to keep them cleaned off on almost a daily basis.
Any other questions? Yes, Kim?
Going back to the restricted area in the river. So you're declining or refusing to release any documents that support the issues with that area from any, you obviously have a permit or letters or some documents that discuss this. So are you just declining to release anything?
We can discuss that with the administration, decide. I guess we're going to have to release something, sounds like. It is an area that you do not need to disturb the riverbed in that area, period. That's why the SP is in the contract. If you did disturb that area, we may have to shut down and reevaluate the impacts of the project, which we don't want to do. So that SP is in there for you to avoid disturbing the riverbed in that area. But we can discuss what type of information we can release and send that back out.
Yes, I just wanted to bring up another point in regard to the access on the north side of the river. And I appreciate the fact that you're going to get us a point of contact on that. But I would urge you to, if you consider, at least talking to the city, and because I think you guys have a lot more stroke than we do when it comes to getting something pushed through for access in that regard, as to whether it be 50 or 75 feet wide on one side of the bridge, because we have to have some room to work in there. And I just think that you're going to have a better chance of making that available so that we can price this work and do it as economically as we can without any uncertainty in being able to use some access.
Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, another question.
Yeah. I had one more question in regard to the $80,000 liquidated damage, and I understand that in regard to the Part B. But it also, I'm trying to remember which paragraph it was. I think it was at the paragraph 7 on page 3 of 4. It's one of the last paragraphs. And it said that the damages would be $80,000 a day, and it could be read that that was at the completion or in addition to C, at the end. You know, say you name so many number of days for Part C, which I understand, and you go beyond that. Does the 80,000 kick in then also?
The 80,000, correct me, but the 80,000 is only in play when the bridge is out of service.
Understood.
Once the bridge is in service, the B component is completed. The C component is for the life of the contract.
Understood.
And actually, there's liquidated damages on top of that.
The standard one.
Yes.
Yes.
But if the contractor goes beyond the C component. It would, but the bridge is open. It would just be the C component plus the liquidated damages. Correct?
Thank you.
Kevin, I have one more clarification. On the gas line that's on the bridge, the center point line. The center point line was originally painted with lead paint, a lead primer. It has been repainted multiple times since then with a non-lead paint. But there is lead paint on the steel pipe that's on the bridge, but it's not on the surface.
Yes.
Is the ballpark city property, has there been discussions with them about access from their parking lot to the ballpark? And there's they have a parking lot or just adjacent to the approach of the bridge. So is there any rules concerning the ballpark?
We've been in pretty close contact with the ballpark, and that is all city-owned property. That's leased to the baseball club there. What we have advised the city is when the construction gets underway, that Broadway will be closed up to the intersection, which would force all pedestrian traffic out of the construction area. So there wouldn't be any folks crossing underneath any of the bridge structure. Is that right?
That's correct.
Any other questions? Okay.
I want to make sure, clarifying removal of the water line. You know, we said by our contractor being you, the contractor who is a successful bidder. So the removal of the water line from the bridge is part of the bridge contract. Also, there will be some coordination with the water company in regards to the deactivation of the line and the reactivation of the line too. And one other comment I'd like to make is just for your information, we want to minimize any possible delays we can in regards to utilities delaying the contractors. This job was a contract that we did to locate the utilities even to the quality level D, which lines were exposed and surveyed. So I just want to pass that information on to you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Based on the kind of number of questions related to the access on the north side, that was pretty well a roll call of questions, one right after another, written and verbal. And I think the theme that you're hearing from the industry is that it's not like a normal property owner. It's a public entity. And so based on the feedback from all of the industry that we're all really struggling with how to go deal with the negotiation one at a time with the public entity, is the state willing to consider, based on this kind of overwhelming feedback, a reconsideration of their position on that? It really would service all of us and the project well if we could just get a set of ground rules. You'll have access in this area, you know, and pay the owner, pay that entity this much for this, you know, whatever the terms would be, it'd be pretty level playing field then. So I guess the question is just a request to maybe reconsider that based on the feedback that you've heard here today. No answer required, just maybe.
We'll ask again.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Last chance. Another question, well, I say a question, a request. is that we received several requests for electronic design files, and we have those here. There is a letter that goes with it, but after this meeting's over with, if your firm would like one, please come up here and see Erica, and we can get this to you since you're here. Do you know what they are?
They're CAD files, MicroStation CAD files.
Anything else? Okay. Again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming out. We look forward to a successful awarding of the contract. You better hurry.